I grew up in Dingle, a wee coastal village in County Kerry. You know how it is in these parts. Everyone's nose is in everyone else's business, but there's still secrets, so there is. The biggest one? That old lighthouse on the rocky coast, abandoned donkeys years ago. That Dingle lighthouse was like a giant sentinel looming over us. Built back in the day, it guided ships for Yonks before they shut it down in the 60s. After that, it just stood there, lonely as a cloud, staring out at the wild Atlantic. When I hit 16, I started pulling pints at the local. Proper cozy gaff it was. Stone walls, dark oak bar, always heaving with locals and blow-ins. That's where I first caught wind of the lighthouse whispers. One lashing October night, I'm wiping down glasses when I spot two odd fellas huddled in a corner. I recognize Seamus, this retired fisherman, but the other lad? Complete stranger. They're talking all hush, eyes darting around like startled hares. Seamus mentions seeing lights at the lighthouse some nights, even though there's no lessee running to the place. Jesus, curiosity hit me like a hammer. I'd grown up with all those tales about banshees and leprechauns, but this felt real. Dangerous as feck. Next night after work, I legged it to the cliff, the Atlantic winds cutting through me like a knife, bringing that salty, seaweedy smell. The lighthouse is this black silhouette against the starry sky. No lights, but I hear something. This faint sound, barely there over the roaring waves. I creep closer, heart hammering like mad. The old metal door groans when I push it open, the sound echoing through the empty tower. The smell of mold and sea hits me like a slap in the gob. I climb those spiral stairs, my hand sliding along the rusty railing. The sound gets louder with every step. I freeze at the top. The circular room, once empty as a priest's promise, is now crammed with gear. There's this hooded figure messing with what looks like a bodged radio setup. Cables twist around on the ground, connecting to batteries and other devices I couldn't identify even for a reward. The individual quickly turns toward me upon hearing my presence, and I find myself standing in front of a middle-aged lady whom I have never seen before. Her eyes go wide as saucers, then narrow to slits. "Who in the name of Jesus are you? What are you at here?" I ask, my voice shaking like a leaf. She clams up for a sec, then says in a voice hard as nails, "You shouldn't be here, boyo. Scarper and forget what you saw." But I'm rooted to the spot. My eyes are darting around the room, picking up stuff I missed before. Maps on the walls with penciled-in coordinates. A whiteboard with what looks like a schedule. Then it hits me like a ton of bricks. This is a smuggling operation. The woman must have copped on that. I'd figured it out. She comes at me, her hand diving into her coat pocket. I stumble back, but my foot slips on the damp floor. I go down hard, my head cracking against the wall. When I get up, wobbly as a newborn calf, she's on me. I feel this sharp sting in my arm, and the world starts spinning like a top. The lighthouse walls seem to close in as everything goes black. I wake up on the beach, freezing Atlantic water lapping at my feet. I'm completely lost, feeling a pounding headache like a severe toothache. The sun is rising. For a hot second, I think it was all some mad dream. Then I see the needle mark on my arm, and reality comes crashing down. I stagger back to town, scared out of my wits, but determined as hell. I go straight to Dingle's tiny Garda station. Sergeant O'Brien, a fella I've known since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, listens to my story, his face getting more serious by the second. The next few days are mental. Guards from Dublin show up, and they put the lighthouse under watch round the clock. A week later, they make the bust. Turns out there's this whole smuggling network using the abandoned lighthouse as their command center. Boats would come in at night, bringing drugs from the continent. The lighthouse was the distribution hub for the whole West Coast. The news hits our little town like a thunderbolt. Dingle's always been quiet as the grave. Everyone knowing everyone. Finding out there was a criminal operation right under our noses. Talk about a kick in the teeth. The worst part? Some locals were in on it. Seamus, that old fisherman I overheard in the pub, one of the main local contacts. Other familiar names pop up during the investigation. People I saw every day, said how you to on the street, who'd been part of my life since I was a wee lad. They make the arrests on this miserable November morning. I watch Seamus being led away in cuffs to a Garda car. Our eyes meet for a split second, and I see a mix of anger and resignation in his. They seal up the lighthouse and put it under constant watch. Life in town? It's never the same. Trust between neighbors? Gone like snow off a ditch. People who used to chat like old friends now eye each other like they're sizing up a threat. The pub, once full of laughter and tall tales, goes quiet as the grave. I spend weeks experiencing nightmares. At times, I find myself stuck at the peak of the lighthouse, with enormous waves looming dangerously close. At times, that enigmatic lady is pursuing me down the streets of Dingle. I awaken drenched in a chilly sweat, feeling overwhelming guilt because I disclosed the truth and brought chaos into several lives. Nevertheless, I acknowledge that I made the right choice. Drug trafficking devastates individuals, families, and communities as a whole. Who knows the damage that could have been done if they had carried on? As time passes, things begin to calm down. Life in Dingle gradually adjusts to a different routine. Tourism, our main source of income, continues to thrive. Tourists visit for the stunning views, to try our renowned whiskey, and possibly see dolphins in the bay. They are unaware of the drama that occurred here. Currently, I am still located in Dingle. I inherited my father's pub when he retired from working in the kitchen. The pub remains the preferred destination for both locals and visitors. The laughter has returned, as well as the stories. However, a new tone is emerging in the conversation, as people are starting to realize that hidden secrets may exist even in unexpected locations. What about the lighthouse? It remains upright, a quiet symbol of past events. At times I find myself gazing at it from inside the pub. The lonely outline against the starry sky brings me back to the night that completely changed everything. And I ponder, what else is the Atlantic concealing? What undisclosed narratives are concealed in the dim nooks of our small coastal community? Perhaps it is best to remain unaware. However, one thing is certain. In Dingle, as in other places, the truth will always eventually be revealed, brought forth by the everlasting passage of time. Like and subscribe if you are enjoying. I was raised in a small Irish village where the ocean intertwined with ancient folklore like mist on the mountains. Grandma constantly emphasized that there was a hidden depth to the world, but I never really pondered it. I was certainly in for a shocking surprise. Fresh out of high school, I gathered my things and relocated to Dublin, a lively urban center. I was able to secure a job at a unique antique store in Temple Bar, located in the bustling party district. The store was a complete adventure, filled with various strange trinkets. The owner, elderly Seamus, was a man of few words, with eyes that appeared to contain the mysteries of the cosmos. He simply muttered about how every item had a unique story to share. One evening, while closing up, something grabbed my attention. This old mirror, typically covered with a dark cloth, was exposed as if it had just been uncovered. I assumed Seamus had neglected to conceal it after displaying it to a customer. However, as I tried to put the cloth back on, I got a huge scare. Looking back at me was not my own reflection, but the visage of an elderly woman, her eyes brimming with sadness. Her silent lips were conveying a message to me, as if she were attempting to communicate something. I blinked quickly, and suddenly I saw my terrified reflection in the mirror again. For days following, I attempted to persuade myself that it was merely my mind playing games with me. However, when night came, and I was by myself in my cramped apartment, sleep refused to make an appearance. Whenever I shut my eyes, I would always see that face in the mirror right in front of me. The shop started experiencing increasingly strange occurrences every day. Objects moved when no one was watching. Whispers emanated from vacant corners. As for Seamus, he was growing distant, lost in deep thought that was beyond my comprehension. While organizing the basement one evening, I discovered a historic diary. Even though the writing was sloppy, I managed to interpret certain parts. It was owned by a woman named Siobhan from the 19th century. She wrote a story about an accursed mirror, a device that trapped souls. My heart was beating like a drum. Could it be? Were Grandma's stories about supernatural objects more than just tall tales? I confronted Seamus with what I'd found. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled the plug. Then, with a voice shakier than a leaf in a storm, he spilled the beans. The mirror, he said, belonged to his great-grandma, Siobhan. She was known as a wise woman, someone who could peek behind the curtain of reality. But her gift made others green with envy and scared out of their wits. On Samhain night, when they say the veil between worlds is thinner than tissue paper, she was accused of witchcraft. To save her own skin, Siobhan used some ancient hocus-pocus to trap her soul in the mirror, but the spell went haywire. Not only did her soul get stuck, but the mirror started sucking in other lost souls like a vacuum. Seamus had inherited the mirror and the burden of keeping it safe. The antique shop was just a front, a place to hide the mirror in plain sight. While Seamus was speaking, the atmosphere became as dense as molasses. Shadows moved playfully, and whispers surrounded me from all directions. The mirror, now free of its cover, shimmered with a spooky glow. It struck me suddenly. This was more than just a job I had found by chance. It was an inheritance, a duty that I now carried as well. Grandma's tales, the myths of Ireland, they were all true, and I was right in the heart of it. Every night after closing the store, I make sure to double-check everything. I ensure that the mirror is fully covered. When I see myself in the mirror, I can't stop thinking about how many wandering spirits are gazing back at me, hoping to be released. This big city I thought I knew? It's got secrets older and deeper than the ocean. And me, who came to Dublin looking for knowledge. Well, I found out the hard way that sometimes knowledge comes with a price tag most folks aren't willing to pay. I'm Sarah, a nature photographer living in a tiny town up in Washington State, right on the Canadian border. I live for exploring these forests, always chasing that perfect shot for my next show. But man, nothing could have prepped me for what went down that fall morning. I decided to hit this off-the-beaten-path trail in Olympic National Park. Left at the crack of dawn, packing my camera, grub, and emergency kit. The air was damp and chilly, with fog thick as pea soup blanketing the forest floor. Something in the air had me on edge, like the towering sequoias were trying to warn me. After hoofing it for hours, I started noticing something fishy. There were tire tracks in the mud, which ain't normal this deep in the park. The quiet was overwhelming. Not a sound could be heard from the birds. My curiosity overpowered me, leading me to follow the tracks, my heart beating rapidly. I followed the path which took me to a tiny open space. There I stumbled upon an old pickup, abandoned and looking like it had been there for ages, all mossy and mud-caked. I snapped some pics, shivers running down my spine. The air felt heavy, like it was hiding dark secrets. While I was poking around, a twig snapped. Quick as a flash, I ducked behind a massive sequoia, my heart in my throat. That's when I spotted two guys emerging from the woods, whispering. Their eyes were cold as ice, calculating. They were jumpy, scanning the area like hawks. I was able to capture a few photos with trembling hands. I observed as they opened the truck bed and began removing large packages covered in black plastic. The smell emanating from them was sufficient to make you feel nauseous. I felt queasy as I understood that I was likely observing something unlawful, maybe even smuggling or something more serious. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise coming from one of the packages. Did I just witness some kind of creature? I experienced a cold sensation in my bloodstream. Were these individuals engaged in the illegal trade of endangered animals? Accidentally, my foot landed on a branch with a loud cracking noise, sounding like a gunshot. The men grew quiet and fixed their eyes on my direction. Their eyes swept the area, and suddenly I was positive that they had spotted me. One of them pulled out a firearm. I held my breath. Everything went dead quiet, for what felt like forever. Then I heard footsteps coming my way. I didn't think twice. I took off like a bat out of hell down the trail, branches whipping my face, roots nearly tripping me up. I heard shouts behind me and then, holy crap, gunshots. I ran faster than I ever had before, driven by fear that gave me incredible stamina. I didn't know the distance I covered, but upon reaching the park gate, I was breathless and frightened. I headed straight for the park rangers and confessed everything, displaying the photos with hands still shaking. They became pale as ghosts when they saw the pictures. The authorities didn't mess around. They put together a joint FBI and Fish and Wildlife operation. A few days later, I found out my discovery had led to the seizure of hundreds of wild animals being smuggled, many in awful shape. They nailed a bunch of guys from an international animal trafficking ring. I was relieved it all worked out, but the memories of that day still haunt me. The ice-cold stare of those men, the echo of gunshots in the forest. At times, I wake up feeling terrified and drenched in sweat, reliving those horrifying moments. I continue to have a passion for nature and photography. However, I am now more conscious of the threats present within the forest's allure. Each time I walk a trail, I can't resist glancing back, curious about the mysterious secrets the woods may hold. Thank you for watching until the end. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. It's a pleasure to see you on our channel.